Hello, sir.
Hello, Jason. How are you?
Doing swell. I never say that. Doing
You
swell.
never say swell.
I
You
think
don't say
that's
swell.
kind of neat. I'm going to bring it back.
You should.
All right. Doing good. I can hear you, see you. Are you ready to jump
I'm
in?
ready. I'm
Let's
ready.
do it. Let's do it. Welcome to Just Curious Media. This is That's a Crime. I'm Jason Connell.
And I'm Sal Rodriguez.
All right, Sal. We are back with another crime.
And of course, we're getting into the casualties.
This is a tough one.
Yeah.
This is a tough one, a timely one, because today we are breaking down the true crime story of the New York City subway passenger kills unhinged man with deadly chokehold in 2023.
Too many people watching MMA. I know that that's what this is.
Yeah,
Surely that has to be mentioned at some point by somebody.
probably. Well, this is a very complicated situation, very recent too, and tragic. And it just so happened on this particular day, I was leaving New York City via Penn Station. Although we weren't getting on a subway, we're getting on a train to go to New Jersey. So it wasn't anywhere near this, but yet it's connected. And I read it the next day and was like, oh my gosh, and just the events and watched the video and knew that we had to cover it on That's a Crime.
Was there you think a change in the air? Did you feel anything? Anything
No,
palpable?
because the timeline, I think I was on that train when this unfortunate incident was occurring.
Wow.
So there was no, the news doesn't travel that fast. But later that night, the next day, it did. And I just was like, wow, my gosh. So let's jump into it because it's heavy and there's a lot to get through. On May 1st, 2023, 30-year-old Jordan Neely began an aggressive rant on a northbound F train on a New York City subway. Shortly thereafter, fellow passenger 24-year-old U.S. Marine veteran Daniel Penny intervened, taking Neely to the ground and putting him in a chokehold. Thoughts thus far?
You know, in reporting, I always wonder. They always mention the person's occupation. So in
Mm-hmm.
this instance, is the fact that he's a U.S. Marine veteran relevant to the overall story? Because we were talking about
It's
like,
trained.
yeah, that's what that implies. Then it's not
Yeah.
like if someone who was not a U.S. Marine veteran did
Yeah.
this.
Right. I
Does that
also
imply
read,
you should know better? Does that imply that?
yeah, I get it's just the facts. Marines are trained, sees a threat, isolates, not stabilizes, diffuses threat, and turns into a killing, unfortunately. I mean, the video says a lot, and I don't know if you've seen the whole video. It's like 3.5 minutes long.
Well, Jason, yes, I have seen the video. It's very
Yeah.
disturbing. There's even a warning in the beginning
Yeah.
of the video,
Yes.
distressing content.
Yeah.
And I have to mention MMA again. You know,
Hmm.
as a decades long MMA fan, we see this type of choke happen all the time. It is a type of choke. I believe could be called a rear naked choke, based on the body positioning. And you cannot any submission hold, but in this instance, a deadly chokehold cannot be just held indefinitely. You can't just hold
Yeah.
a chokehold. You
Yeah. The
have to
refs
let
come in and
go.
break it up.
Yeah, a ref's going to break it up. Somebody's going to break it up. But
Yeah.
based on the video, it did look to me like the chokehold was not necessary for three guys to hold this guy down, who is, well, we're going to hear what he has to say, but it's
Yeah.
like I did not see the necessary force in
Mhm.
this particular instance.
Right. So continuing on, another passenger on the train, freelance journalist Juan Alberto Vasquez, filmed nearly 3.5 minute video, the one that you and I both saw, and shared the following about Neely. He started screaming in an aggressive manner. He said he had, oh, I'm sorry, Sal. I took
No.
over. You take this. You
Okay.
take this. My apologies.
He started screaming in an aggressive manner. He said he had no food, he had no drink, that he was tired, and doesn't care if he goes to jail. He started screaming all these things, took off his jacket, a black jacket that he had, and threw it on the ground.
So he's making a scene. I've been on many subways before. I've seen a few scenes.
I think anybody in any
Yeah.
city has seen similar
in any
scenes.
city for sure, but a subway in particular. But absolutely.
Yeah.
We've all been around this. The difference with a subway, though, Sal, or a bus, is you're stuck.
You're kind of stuck. You're
You
trapped.
know, subway, you can maybe get to the next car. You know, I'm
Mhm.
assuming it's accessible and not full, but these are not places you want to be.
Jason, I don't like subways. I'm just going to come out with it.
Yeah,
I don't like subways.
you got that claustrophobic side of you.
It's claustrophobic. It's also just like, I like personal space. Let me tell you something. When the COVID world came out with distancing,
Yeah.
when they came out with this thing called social distancing, I was like, where you been my whole life? You know, I was like, this is fantastic. So yeah, you're tight with a bunch of strangers. What if it's hot? What if the air conditioning is not working? You cannot escape. You're trapped. And then stuff like this happens. I don't like subways.
I understand. Sal, come to New York. I'll meet you there. We'll take the subway. I'll show you the city. Paint it red. Negative.
Ever
Not
since the
coming.
Warriors, Jason, ever since the Warriors.
No, I know.
Yep.
I know.
Ever since I was like, I don't think I like these subways.
All right, back on track. And sorry for stealing your lines there. It's color coded. I color coded it, and yet I was excited.
It's okay. Well, this one, this one's pretty heavy. I think maybe
I get
you're
caught
thrown
up
off.
in this one. I mean, there's a lot happening. You have this
understand.
freelance journalist filming, sharing information. And then he said that Vasquez, that is, that Penny came up behind Neely during this tirade, just not happy, throwing his jacket, and took him to the ground in a chokehold. Now, this is the tough part, keeping him there for 15 minutes. Not the 3.5 minutes in the video, which is still too long. In an MMA fight, like you're talking about, they come over in a matter of seconds. Okay, done. You tap out. Okay, over. 15 minutes. Now, hopefully most of this is he's just trying to restrain him. And yes, if you watch the video, other people are also helping, but you don't need to apply that continued pressure. Now, Sal, some people do that hold until they can choke them out, not kill them, but knock them out. That's probably someone's intent who's a novice, or maybe in the Marine Corps they've done it. I'm assuming that's what's going through their head, not all the way to expiring them.
Well,
but,
Jason, I think a lot of it has to do with the fitness and overall strength of the person
both
being
sides.
choked.
Absolutely. Can they take it?
I mean, imagine it. Let's say hypothetically this were an 85-year-old woman being choked. Would we assume an 85-year-old woman is going to be choked out and be okay and come to 30 seconds later like an MMA fighter?
Yeah.
No. So we should never assume anybody can just come to like our favorite MMA fighters.
I know.
It doesn't work that way. Those are top athletes.
Yeah.
You're an average random person. Who's to say I could live through being choked out?
Yeah.
Totally. I think I'm so strong or fit, I may not survive being choked out.
I know. And just talking about this crime, I knew this would happen. It just starts to stir things up. Like, yeah, it's an overcompensation for being scared, trying to be a hero, fear. But, making a scene and threatening people is also bad. It's a very complicated situation, but the outcome was horrific. So the video, as we've been talking about, it's quite disturbing. And it shows Penny with his arm wrapped around Neely's neck in a headlock as other bystanders, one for sure, is helping, trying to control Neely's hands as if they're still threatening, right? I mean, they're not. But people, they've probably never been in a situation like this. Can't speak for the Marine, but others watching, thinking they're helping, and this happens. I was telling Sophia, I've read this too many times. A lot of times, if there's an incident at a bar or a strip club and someone's misbehaving, bouncers tackle them, put them on the ground. You can't hear them, right? It's loud, music's banging, and they have killed them, just pushed on their cavity, and they ran out of breath, and no one ever heard the guy wincing or screaming to get up. This is not a first. So it's a scary thing when you take someone's air supply. Very scary. Now, Vasquez also added the following, and Sal, this is absolutely yours.
He moved his arms, but he couldn't express anything. All he could do was move his arms. Then suddenly he just stopped moving. He was out of strength. None of us who were there thought he was in danger of dying. We thought he just passed out or ran out of air.
See, again, I think that's the intent. But as you just astutely pointed out, we don't know this guy's condition. Neely, we find out he's homeless. How he could be malnutrition. You don't know, and you can't assess that. Dehydrated, a huge thing. Yeah. People die from dehydration all the time. So yeah, someone's at risk, and they can't take this. But these people, they're not the wise. They don't know what's going on. So yeah, this is an unfortunate situation on countless fronts. So Vasquez said he had mixed feelings about the fatal encounter because Neely had not physically attacked anyone on the train before he was taken down. And he goes on to say, I think that in one sense, it's fine that citizens want to jump in and help. But I think as heroes, we have to use moderation. This would never have happened if the police had shown up within 5 minutes. Then we'd be talking about a true hero. It's complicated. And it is. Very much.
Well, I think he brought up a very important point, and that is that Neely had not physically attacked anyone.
No.
So
maybe
he
threatened, but didn't. I mean,
even none of the words.
No, he did not attack.
But he didn't even attack verbally.
No,
he did not attack people verbally. He was just kind of going nuts,
unhinged, and he put people on edge.
Yeah.
And it probably, if it's going to get to this point, I do agree, it'd have to cross the line. Like, I'm not here to judge. I'm just here to report. But I think if I'm in that situation, I'm monitoring it very closely. If I'm on that subway, I'm locked in like a hawk and just trying to get to a safe place. That threat would have to physically come up to me, whomever it is, whatever it is, and cross those barriers. That's me. That's my, or who I'm with. Like all of a sudden you or Sophia or someone's in harm's way and actually being accosted. That's when that's my barometer. That's when I would cross over. Other people, different. They feel threatened if you look at them. So, I don't know.
I mean, we're talking about Neely's mental health.
Yes.
His possible mental health issues have been addressed. How about Penny? Nobody's talking about the fact that maybe a post, he might have some PTSD, so when we're talking about mental health, whenever the word mental health comes up, you have to consider not just
all sides.
Yeah. Everybody's running around with mental health issues out there.
And this is still a very recent situation here, right? A horrific event, and it's very fluid. I was doing research the other day. There's more articles today. This is constantly moving, and more of these things will probably come out. In fact, I thought I was done and then kept looking, and there's statements we're going to get into by both sides, and we'll save that for the end. Back to the crime. The northbound F train was eventually stopped, and the conductor called 911. Neely, who was living on the streets and had a history of mental health issues, lost consciousness after being put in the chokehold, and EMS workers at the station were unable to revive him. Oh, man. As
it's
for
one
Penny,
of those things like they're
please.
Well, it just brings to mind these guys are trying to basically render him unconscious. So I was thinking, well, why doesn't anybody register first aid when he's unconscious? Because that was their objective. Their objective was to put him out, not then revive him and bring him back to consciousness.
Yeah.
So this is there's so many gray areas and what do they call precariousness here. Good luck to whatever judge or jury will have to sort this out.
Yeah. As for Penny, he was questioned by police and released the same day, and he has not been criminally charged. The case is expected to go before a grand jury this week to determine whether or not to bring criminal charges. Now, the New York City medical examiner did rule that Jordan Neely's death was a homicide. And since this unfortunate and deadly event occurred, there have been ongoing protests in New York City. If I was still there, I would have seen some of this, but I saw it online. I was reading about it. Anything else before I go on, Sal? Anything else to these
No,
points?
I'm listening, man. I'm following along.
A little more backstory on Neely. He was a well-known street performer who impersonated Michael Jackson. And Sal, in the photos I saw, he looked the part. He absolutely looked the part. So there was a time that, someone's got mental health and they're living on the streets. That's not a good combination. But these photos, he looked bright-eyed, young, just energetic, like a guy in front of Grauman's. They dress up in front of Grauman's and they get, tips to be in photographs. One of those guys. He looks good. He looks clean cut. And just, I don't know how far back the photos went, but I'm like, God, that's the same guy. And more on the tragic side. Neely had been previously arrested 44 times for multiple assaults, attempted child abduction, drugs, and indecent exposure. Officials say that he had at least 43 cases of an aided case where mental health care workers took him in for treatment. I'd never heard of that before, Sal. Had you?
No.
Okay.
Aided case, no.
Aided.
I mean, I've heard of 5150 where someone's put on a psychiatric hold.
Okay.
So that they don't harm themselves or others, but I haven't heard of something called an aided case.
Yeah,
No.
nor had I. And the day before his unfortunate death, he was under investigation for pushing someone on the tracks. I'm assuming that's the subway tracks. And he had an arrest warrant for a violent attack on an older woman. So he was probably going down a spiral. You're on the streets, there's no support, and he's got mental health issues. And this is kind of his, his space. He's on the subway. And if you've been in New York, or I guess, have you not? You've not been in New York, but
I haven't been to New York.
Yeah.
No.
And nor would you go near a subway. But
yes,
if you did, once you pay to go on a subway, you can live down in the subway. You could get on other subways. You could stand there. You can't sleep on there too long because I'm sure the cops eventually would come and get you off, or, a subway will also finally take a break or get to the end of the line and clear it. But you can kind of just be in that space. And it's not a very positive and healthy space to be. Underground with all that be. People take it to get from A to B very quickly and get back up on the street.
Yeah.
So pretty tough. It's a lot to take in. It's truly sad. The video is, you never even get to really see Neely in the video because he's just, compromised. He's in a headlock.
Yeah, he's already in the chokehold. When we see the video. And all these things about all his mental health history, all these horrible charges that he's faced.
Yeah.
He might be guilty on some of these, might be.
Don't know. I'm just reporting what I've read.
No, I know, but it's like, it almost like is completely irrelevant though. Like for that day on that train in that moment, whatever went on in either of these guys' past, in anyone's past, is irrelevant to that very moment.
Yeah, it's too big of a price to pay.
Everybody keeps bringing up Neely's backstory, but nobody's bringing up Penny's backstory.
Yeah, and it doesn't help, and not that we want to glorify this, but in the video, if you watch the video, Neely is a black male, 30 years old, and Penny is a white male, 24 years old. Now, I'm sure press and media could run with that if they wanted to, and hey, this is a race thing. I have my own stance on that. I think it's an incredibly unfortunate incident, and no one's talking about Penny's mental health. It's a really astute point, really good point you bring up, and maybe that will come to light. But one of the other people helping Penny looked like a minority as well. Could have been Hispanic, Mexican, black. I don't know. But so it's not like we never got a good vantage point of the subway. We still here and there. But, and it's not like people were stopping Penny from what was going on from this 15-minute hold. Everyone was kind of like, oh, okay, we don't really know. It's like you could ask 12 Angry Men and like that great film and like, what do you think? And they probably weren't going around polling people, but I'm sure not everybody was in lockstep, but they're not going to go then fight the guy that's helping defend. It's like, it's so complicated on countless levels. And
especially from your vantage point, especially from where you walked in on the scene,
yeah,
especially from where you're watching the video. I mean, even the person that took the video
yeah,
was
that's
kind of
was
conflicted. They're saying,
totally.
well, I don't think it should have went this way. Maybe he could have. So bystanders still have different
Yeah,
interpretations of the actual event. But one thing is for certain is be very careful putting a chokehold on anyone, and be very
absolutely.
careful about never getting caught in a chokehold.
Yeah, you're
So
right.
just stay away from these types of situations. And one of those things that you can do is stay off the subway.
Okay. This is an anti-subway
Yes.
podcast. Well, that they taught us that in Hapkido, like not the kill shots. Yes, you do learn those, but get someone in an armbar, get someone in
Yeah.
a wrist lock. That's not going to kill them, but
Yeah.
it hurts, and you have total control over that person.
It subdues them.
It's done, and they don't want to go any further. And of course, that's clear-headed, and it's training, and you might be taught one way to submit by chokehold, and unfortunately, that was the case here.
And Jace, just to be clear to the uninitiated, what a chokehold does is you put pressure on the neck and it cuts blood flow to the brain.
Yeah,
That's what it does. That is what happens in a neck chokehold.
that's right. So now there's some statements. And again, I just got these today. They were a few days ago, but put them in our notes for us. But you'll read them, the first one anyway, Daniel Penny's statement, courtesy of his attorneys, I believe. So, Sal?
We would first like to express, on behalf of Daniel Penny, our condolences to those close to Mr. Neely. Mr. Neely had a documented history of violent and erratic behavior, the apparent result of ongoing and untreated mental illness. When Mr. Neely began aggressively threatening Daniel Penny and the other passengers, Daniel, with the help of others, acted to protect themselves until help arrived. Daniel never intended to harm Mr. Neely and could not have foreseen his untimely death. For too long, those suffering from mental illness have been treated with indifference. We hope that out of this awful tragedy will come a new commitment by our elected officials to address the mental health crisis on our streets and subways. There's the subway.
Yeah.
And then
Okay.
you see the rebuttal though, and you get to see what
Mm,
what the Neely side had to say about it,
yeah.
which I think makes sense as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's obviously well crafted by an attorney. And, what are they going to say? In my heart, I don't think the intent was ever to kill, but there's so many factors it's bad judgment, honestly. Yeah, hold them down. Hold them in any other hold if you have to. Once you're holding someone down too, Sal, the last thing they probably want to do is let that person up, right? But it's the choking, it's knowing what that's going to do, cut off air. People can't survive that way. And it's amplified. Those who've ever been in a fight or some sort of a heated exchange, adrenaline is pumping. I'm sure everyone on that car was just overwhelmed, and Penny more than anyone else. He's like, what have I got myself into? I'm not letting go. And you're not even making good decisions anymore. So it's just, you've put yourself in this bad situation. So absolutely at fault. Probably didn't mean to kill, but did, right? Did. The intent, I would say probably not, but people could argue that, but did. And Neely, yeah, obviously his track record is checkered. He's gotten away with that type of thing before, that behavior. And it's a bigger fundamental problem if people in need are just left to scrounge around on the subway and threaten people here and there, and everyone just kind of lets it happen, in plain sight. Hey, man, I was just in New York. This is a thing. And I lived in Los Angeles for a long time. It's a thing. You're there all the time. It's a major, major problem, much bigger than, just a one-off here and there. So
I've
oh,
experienced
please.
that myself, Jason. I've experienced. I living in Los Angeles. Heck,
Mm-hmm.
just like a year ago, I remember I was just back in town from a road trip, hadn't been in town 24 hours, and I'm walking down Lancashire,
Yep.
and this transient derelict guy comes up and just starts yelling right in my face. I'm not even going to tell you what he said.
Yeah.
Right in my face at me.
Mm.
Well, you know, I just keep walking.
Get away. There's
Just
no
keep
winning
walking.
that.
What am I supposed to do with this guy? You know, I
I've
was
had
kept moving.
I had something similar happen. I was going to a recording session at Gower Studios to see a friend and then see this guy composing this movie. Same thing. This guy comes up to me. I have a coffee and he is just on something and he's in my space. And I was just like, I did like a juke move and just went inside. There's no winning this. I'm
Yeah.
not going to stand here and battle with you or try to rationalize with you. He was somewhere else.
Yep.
And speaking of which, Sal, this is pertinent to you. I do recall one point in time you were coming to visit me years ago at the LA Athletic Club downtown, my gym, and the address is like either like it's South Olive, but maybe on your map it was kind of vague. And you were calling me like, I'm in Skid Row. Where is this place?
Yeah.
Remember that day?
I started stepping over people, and you know, it's one thing.
I don't mean to laugh.
No, but let me tell you, you know, I grew up in a certain neighborhood. I've seen certain things growing up in Los Angeles. It's one thing if you're around the homeless population. That's one thing.
Yeah.
It's one thing if then you start to see elements of danger.
Yeah.
You know, so like, look, but believe me, yes, living in LA, you're going to pass by homeless. It's going to happen.
It's going to happen.
But yeah, I don't necessarily think I'm in danger necessarily. But I remember that moment when I was going to meet you.
You were
Yeah,
like,
I
hold on a
remember there
second.
was a couple of guys looked at me where they were looking at me because they wanted something from me. And I had my phone, new iPhone in my hand, you know, at the time.
Yeah.
And I said, "Nuh-uh, I got to get out of here. This
Yeah.
is not safe." And that's when that's when the bells go off, the ringers go off. You're like, I got to get out of here. Yeah. So anybody, I think that's the fight or flight. Well, I'm not going to fight.
No.
I need to flight.
You got to
is
get
what I
out
need
of
to
there.
do.
Gotta get out of there. Years later, I would come see you at Skid Row Studios, ironically.
Yeah.
But not on Skid Row.
So. Well, the owner of that
Adjacent.
radio station named the studio Skid Row Studios as an homage to the nearby Skid Row community. Yeah.
Right. So this is Jordan Neely's family making a public statement in rebuttal to Penny's statement. Oh, here we go. Daniel Penny's press release is not an apology nor an expression of regret. It is a character assassination and a clear example of why he believed he was entitled to take Jordan's life. In the first paragraph, he talks about how good he is. And in the next paragraph, he talks about how bad Jordan was in an effort to convince us Jordan's life was worthless. The truth is, he knew nothing about Jordan's history when he intentionally wrapped his arms around Jordan's neck and squeezed and kept squeezing. Ooh, that's really tough. And there's more. His family went on to say that Penny's actions on the train and the subsequent press release spoke to his indifference toward Neely's life and show why he needs to be in prison.
You know, Jason, there's something that you don't hear much anymore, and we used to hear about it, and that was manslaughter. We don't even hear that expression used much anymore. And the idea behind manslaughter was that you caused someone's death accidentally. You did not mean to kill them, but you accidentally killed somebody, so people could have a manslaughter charge, which was especially prevalent in automotive accidents.
Exactly.
They would face a manslaughter charge.
Drunk driving, that would come up a lot.
Even if you believe that Penny did not mean to kill Neely. Okay, fine. I'll buy that. He didn't mean to kill him, but he did cause his death. Therefore, should there be some accountability under a manslaughter charge that would get you at least 1 or 2 years behind bars or probation or some sort of punishment, because were it not for you, conceivably this person would still be alive.
Exactly. And that is why this is on That's a Crime. You initially, before we started recording, said, hey, there's not really a crime here. Well, it's a homicide and someone was killed. So there's a crime enough for me to want to cover it on this episode, on this show. But I think there could be more coming. This is a very fluid situation. I don't know if the protest demonstrations are still going on. Likely so. And whatever happens this week with the grand jury, it could ignite more. I don't know what we have on our hands here. This is one of those things. I don't want there to be riots by any means, but I hope change comes. I don't know the current situation of the police staffing and if they've had cutback. I don't know, but something's got to be done to monitor these situations, stop them from happening. Hey, listen, there's cameras everywhere in the world now. Very inexpensive cameras, ring cameras, blink cameras, phones. Camera up the subways. Just camera them up. And so you're always monitoring and you can act immediately if there's a situation. He had him in a headlock for 15 minutes and all the passengers sitting there. It's like, that is far too long. Like, we need faster response time. And then there's the homeless issue, which in mental health, there's just, this is loaded, Sal. There's so much to unpack here. And we're just scratching the surface and just covering this one incident, but we will keep our eyes on it and see how this thing plays out for sure.
Well, and I hope that Jordan Neely is spending some time with what could possibly be his idol, Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
In heaven. Rest in peace, Jordan Neely.
Rest in peace.
Yeah,
Yes.
he's obviously had a hard life leading up to this.
Yeah.
Has had problems leading up to this. So rest in peace, and I hope that you finally get some consolation to your suffering.
So that covers it. The true crime story of the New York City subway passenger kills unhinged man with deadly chokehold in 2023. Like I just said, we'll follow the events of this case, and we will be back with more crime, Sal. Some lighter. I know you prefer the light stuff, but we do mix it up here. We never know. These things are relevant, and we've kind of fallen into this groove, or I have anyway, of the more recent crimes.
Yes.
And I think I've mentioned this before. Maybe we'll do a classic. I say classic. It's hard to embellish a crime, but a well-known older crime and the newer crimes. You could just do crimes every day. You could do 10 crimes a day, unfortunately, but that's what happens in this space.
Jason, what's interesting is on this show, That's a Crime,
Yep.
we're spending time in the newer realm, whereas on our other show, Let's Talk Cobra Kai, we're spending time in the older realm, in the world of Karate Kid, specifically, as opposed to the world of Cobra Kai specifically. So like over there, you're retro, over here, you're new.
Well, we just fell into this groove. We've done some classic crimes. I mean, our first crime, DB Cooper, incredible hijack heist. We've done the Charles Lindbergh baby kidnapping. So initially I was thinking, oh yeah, the classics. And you start to research crime and man, these things are popping up and they're just so relevant. So I think a 1-2 punch, you could have the classics and then have more modern, or have another show. Who knows? It's endless, Sal. It's endless, unfortunately.
I feel like also crimes like this are sort of what do they call them? Mile markers in society, in history, that show you just kind of how things are out there.
Yeah.
It's not pretty.
No.
You look at it, you're like, this is not a good situation, but that's what's going on out there. Stuff like this happens.
Yeah.
We're still working as a species to get good. I mean, we're relatively new as a species on planet Earth.
Yeah.
We're still doing our best, and stuff like this just reminds us, hey, we're still learning and we're still growing.
Well said, Sal. Well said. Well, hopefully we'll be back for more episodes. So if we don't blow up the planet in the meantime.
Yeah. I have hope.
So thank you so much for listening. And please be sure to subscribe to the That's a Crime podcast and the That's a Crime YouTube live channel. You can also really help us by giving the show a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts.
And for all you listeners that enjoy sharing your thoughts, you can leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, send us a direct message, or post a comment on any That's a Crime social media platform.
We also highly recommend checking out our other podcasts and visiting justcuriousmedia.com. Great job.